Welcome to Real Talk with Gary. If you are listening to this show, that means you are either searching or ready to make a financial change in your life. This show is not only about real estate investing, but also the importance of mindset and the roadmap to a better, healthier life. Learn the daily routines of successful entrepreneurs and the latest market strategies and trends to stay ahead of the curve. Ready for some down-to-earth, north of the border Canadian talk? Here's your host, Gary Hibbert.
All right, welcome back. You are listening to Real Talk with Gary, and on today's show, boy, do I have a treat for you guys. I had the absolute privilege to sit down with the one and only Kathleen Black. Now, one of the things I love about doing these podcasts is a chance to be able to sit down with some of the best in the industry, and Kathleen is an incredible woman and just an absolute wealth of knowledge. Now, before we jump into it, one of the things you'll notice on my show is I've recently mixed in my archive podcast with my new podcast. And the reason I've done this is because I've been doing these podcasts now for a number of years on YouTube, and I'm slowly migrating some of the good ones over onto iTunes for you to be able to listen to. Now, if you're hungry for the rest of these shows that I've done in the past, very simply, you can visit YouTube and search for Smart Home Choice, and you'll find my previous shows. Now, when I first decided to get into real estate investing, the biggest fear I had was tenants. Now, the fear was real. It kept me on the sideline for a number of years because of all the horror stories that I've heard. And I finally decided to take the plunge, and guess what? Here I am today. Now, to help some of you currently on the sidelines, last year, here's what I decided to do was write a guide on how to screen tenants. And you can download it absolutely free at smarthomechoice.ca by simply entering your name and email address. And it's really that simple. Okay, now on today's show, like I said before, you guys are definitely in for a treat. Kathleen and I essentially discussed how to succeed in the game of life. Now, Kathleen Black is one of Canada's leading real estate coaches, trainers, delivering her proven success techniques to agents and teams pretty much right across North America. She began her career as a RE/MAX real estate agent and has worked her way to being recognized within the top 1% of realtors, not only in Durham region, but also on the Toronto Real Estate Board as well. And in 2015, Kathleen Black Coaching and Consulting Company was formed. The success of her business has been centered around integrity, honesty, and result-driven measures, the very thing that represents Kathleen. And on the call, she shares her story on how a divorced single mom made no excuses and pushed through every barrier to succeed. We also discuss why risk is good and the importance of getting out of that comfort zone, the importance to agree on what to do if things don't work out when you're happy. And that's really, really important. And how having a growth mindset and reasons versus results can change your life forever. And we obviously discuss so much more. So sit back, relax, and learn how you too can overcome self-doubt, and enjoy this month's show. Okay, Kathleen, thank you very much for being on the call today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I think the first time we met, and correct me if I'm wrong, was I think sometime last year. We were actually working on a deal together, right? On McLaughlin or something like that?
We were, yes.
Yes. And I think you were filling in for Paul Etherington.
Yeah, for sure. It was a client who was a friend of mine, so I was helping out a little bit with them on their search, and I don't usually get the chance to kind of do sales anymore, but in that case I did, which was great, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just because of that, I remember you telling me that, and that kind of led me down the path of, well, if you don't do that, then what are you doing? And then I found out what you are doing, and that's why you're here today. So I'm excited about it, to kind of learn what you're doing, more about that, and also to share, your expertise with people who are listening on the show today, because maybe you might be able to help them. It might be able to help me. Who knows, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So why don't we kind of jump right into it then, and maybe we'll start off with who you are and how and where you kind of got started, because I think you started off with in investment properties.
Yeah, definitely. Like initially, I didn't really have any intention of actually being an agent selling a higher volume of resale homes at all. I got into having my real estate license to support at the time expanding our investment portfolio with my husband at the time, now ex-husband, but we were purchasing properties and basically, gutting them and then turning them into multi-unit. So, I mean, a really, a lot of sweat equity and labor intensive, and then having enough equity to kind of pull out and buy the next property. So we'd actually live in them as we went. And it became very apparent that we had a certain way of assessing properties. And I've heard this from lots of people who do investments that, they at the time weren't connected with an agent who really could assess the market the way they were, the rule of thumb that they were using. And it was taking a lot more time, and they're becoming very involved in the negotiations. And certainly now I know many agents who are specialized in investment and they do an amazing job. But at the time, we were in that situation and just decided it made sense for me to get my license and actually, be able to do the showings and pursue the negotiations and just assess it based on negotiation or investment strategy. And that's why I got licensed initially. I mean, I had 2 young kids and we were really busy with managing our properties and renovations. And, my husband had another career, so there was lots going on. But looking back, I mean, I'm obviously really happy that I got licensed now, and it took a totally different direction than we intended.
Right. And when was this then? What year did you start doing the investment properties?
Oh, investment properties, my husband at the time we met was working on them already, but we started that in, I guess, 2003 or 2000. It must have been 2004. Okay. I'm trying to remember what year, one of those. Okay. Yeah, and there was already a property that he was just starting to work on. That was like single family, but gutted it and made it into a triplex in the Film District in Toronto. And so essentially, yeah, we lived in a basement apartment while we were working on that until one of the units was, enough that we could live in it, even though it was still somewhat under construction. Again, a story most of people who started that way in investment can relate to. And then got the other 2 units done and rented, and then bought our next property and kind of did the same thing, fixed up units, and then bought another property with a partner and did massive renovations there all around the Beaches Film District area before moving out to Oshawa, which we ended up actually coming out here because we were showing a home or going to see a home with my sister because we couldn't believe the price values at the time because we were in Toronto, she lived in the Beaches, and we couldn't believe it. She said, "Oh, you can get a detached 2.5 story that looked very similar to houses right in our area in the Beaches." And I think some of them were at the time like less than 100,000, and we just couldn't believe it. We're yeah, no way. We're going to come out, and then ended up to find a vacant property like that, beautiful, like the older area in Oshawa that reminded us of the Beaches and had 2 small kids, and said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to go where we have more space," and came out here.
That's crazy because, man, 100-something thousand. I remember when I first got into it, and the first property that I picked up was in Oshawa, and it was like just under 200,000. Yeah, it was like 199, right? Mm-hmm. And it was back in 2008, so it was incredible. Okay, so you move out into Oshawa, so you start doing the investment stuff out here as well too. And then when did things kind of start to shift or change?
Well, essentially, we moved out here, and I was already starting to work on my license when we moved. So I got licensed, I think, in mid-2007, and then I went into training, and I was up and running kind of at the end of the fall market of 2007. Mm-hmm. So I shopped all over and decided to go with a team. I really wanted a lot of experience really quickly. So what happened was I got busy really fast. So that was a total change and shift for us. And then I ended up to go through a separation and all these things that happen when you're in real estate, and our lives were just kind of flipped upside down. And to be honest, to purchase the properties we did and renovate them within 2 to 3 years, but there was a lot of, there had to be a lot of drive to get that done, which also put a lot of pressure on both of us, both really driven people. so we ended up to separating that, and then I put my full focus into real estate because out of nowhere I was the sole provider and we had investment properties, and it can get messy really fast, and unfortunately we sold them. I wanted to kind of keep half and half, but in the end we sold them. So up until that point, really, it was kind of, what is the word? Like the bridges were burned. So if you want motivation to do well in real estate, I guess I had it, that I had to do well really fast.
Right.
So that's what led to real estate and kind of going, okay, we're going to, I'm going to kind of start something new with the two kids and build it up from there. And luckily I was able to do that.
Now, how did you get really busy? Was it that people were seeing what you were doing and then wanted to use you as a real estate agent? Like what got that business fired up?
Yeah, it was a mix. Like the second year on the team, I was already having, I got into real estate, going into a real estate team thinking I'll just stay for 1 year and then I'll leave. And it was a mix. I can't say that everybody who went on the team was as busy or did as many deals or was as successful as quickly as I was, but there were certainly great people who were really busy to model on that team. So, it was a combination, taking duty time from the brokerage, duty time from the team. Having the experience I did with the investment properties, I think was really massive. It gave me a confidence going into the properties to assess them in a way that I think other people coming without any background in real estate didn't necessarily have. And I'm really thankful for that, because when people were looking at, the color of rooms, I'm looking at, the heating, the electrical, right? I'm looking at any issues for insurance. I'm looking at any big ticket items and making sure that I'm communicating that to my clients. So I didn't see it at the time, but in retrospect, now working with a lot of agents, I see it probably was a real asset.
Right. So doing the investment properties. Right. So doing those investment properties.
Yeah. And I liked working. I wasn't shy to work with investors, particularly up to, people buying up to like a fourplex, probably not above that at the time. It was a mix of appointments booked for me, getting training right away. And then, like I said, having repeat referrals pretty much really quickly in the business. I had clients referring back to me, which was great. And the big thing they told me was that they couldn't, it's having that, again, I think it's the investor hat of just being able to say to somebody, hey, here's the market value, here's what this is worth. You have the opportunity, it's priced less because of this, but are you willing to walk into this situation, and just being really honest and upfront. And that actually got me a lot of referrals just by that approach.
Right. And I guess also as well, too, so it sounds like you're obviously working with more real estate investors once you got your real estate license. Is that correct? Was it maybe like an 80-20?
No, it was a mix.
It was a mix?
No,
okay.
It was definitely a mix, even in resale, referring on. But I think people just appreciate that you're not scared to tell them, what they could be getting into and the pros and cons, and letting them make their own decision instead of every house is great and you got to buy it now.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you could see the potential of what it could potentially be, right? Which is a great asset to have, or definitely a great tool to have in your tool belt, right? So, and listening for their formula. I had a formula for how I bought investment properties, and every single buyer or seller I worked with had a formula for how they were going to make that decision. And if I listened, I could understand and support that. And I think that was a big piece of it, just listening for, hey, how do you make big decisions, and what's going to allow you to be comfortable, and what do you need to say yes here so you don't get stuck, because it's your goal to buy or sell. I'm just here to facilitate it. Right. Now, while you were building your investment portfolio, was there any particular piece of advice that you would say that you received that that was just, earth-shattering, or really kind of helped you throughout that stage of your life?
Yeah, funny enough, it was an investor who gave us advice. It was in the beaches. We were going to see a rental because we were trying to decide between renting while we bought another property or buying into a much more expensive property, which we ended up to do, and had many, many sleepless nights because we had to leverage another property and it hadn't all come through yet. And anyways, just a lot of stress at the time. I don't know that I'd put myself in that situation again today, but we were going to see the unit. And it was funny because he was telling us at the time, because we were saying, the market at the time was thought to be a little bit depressed. And he said, hey, when the market's down, the rents go up, like no matter what. And the way he talked about it, he's like, at the end of the day, it's as long as you have a strategy. Because I was like, well, it's not like his monopoly. And he goes, actually, it is. Like, if you have a strategy and you can have fun with it and you can see that really it is a game and there's a strategy to this game, that's how you win in it. Like, you don't over leverage yourself. But if you take so much stress and you take it so seriously, you'll never get in the game. You'll never invest and you'll never grow. And oddly enough, at the time, I really took it to heart. I was like, he's right. Like, you have to have that courage to take educated risks, not full out risks, but educated risk in a way that the most of the population won't do. And I really did take that to heart, that, hey, if there's an opportunity, it's in front of us and we can make it work, we're going to go for it. Perhaps we did that too much. But it was really pivotal for me to go, yeah, you know what? At the end of the day, you have a strategy that works. It's just a formula.
Right. And so with that being said, I mean, it's almost as if you can buy in any market, whether it's going up, sideways, or down, as long as you figured out the strategy and maybe you change those strategies depending on the way the market's moving, correct?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think now it's very different. I mean, our markets in the GTA have gone up so much that, I mean, now the idea is people are actually, paying monthly into investment properties to have the investment into the property. I mean, at the time, we were able to make everything profitable. Like, everything was upside. All of our investments in Toronto paid for the house in Oshawa because the house was much bigger than, cheaper price, but much bigger than we would have had there. And it was, it was essentially at the time just knowing that even if the market went down or stayed the same, like, as long as it was all relative with amortization, it was our friend. Like, we were long-term, we wanted to hold long-term, and
Right.
We knew what those numbers needed to look like. So it was pretty easy to make an analysis and go, even if the market's going a little bit wonky for a couple of years, I mean, as long as you have tenants, and for us, this was a big reason not to have single properties and try to do the multi-unit so that we were sheltered in case of any fluctuation, that if we did have one vacancy, at least we always had some income happening.
Right.
So we definitely had ways that we tried to protect ourselves, for sure, because we were very limited in cash flow and in initial investment money, like extremely limited, that we were always pulling from one house, literally everything, once we had renovated to get to the next one.
Right.
Like, then you could pull up to 5%. You can't do that now, but then we could.
Right. And so, okay, so with that being said, then, were you doing any joint ventures, or were they all just you and your husband at the time?
They were at the time all just us until we did I guess it was only the third, because they were all triplexes, right? So the third property was a duplex that had a partner, and then we lived in one of the triplexes, and then we moved to Oshawa and bought that on our own. And it was also the time of zero down, but luckily we didn't get into that. We knew that wasn't a smart investment for us.
Right. And that was like back in 2008? Like, it was such a short window, like 6 months or
It
7
was.
months. Yeah. And that was when, just before the U.S. Market had its crash, and Canada was like, whoa, Let's get rid of this, right? Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
And it was tempting, right? Because the market was going up. But I mean, I think going through and knowing, like, you put risk to get, and how many people write books and say, hey, if we knew what we knew now, we probably wouldn't have done what we did then, but we also wouldn't be here now. Like, so, we took major risks of, like, buying our property in the Beaches Triangle, which was like double our anticipated next purchase price, and having to, like, loan money and wait for the appraisals and be unsure about it and go in firm because there's 15 offers. And it was an amazing purchase, but I mean, to not sleep for a week wasn't great either. And I think anybody kind of hustling at the time to build your initial investments, like, you take some. Again, it was an educated risk. It wasn't that risky, but it was, there are times where you're kind of going, okay, is this the right way to move forward? But you have to grow.
Yeah, and that's just a good point. And let's maybe spend a little bit of time on risk as well, too, because I think what you're saying is that even though, at the time it felt like it was risky, there was some calculated risk in there, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you believe risk is good? 'Cause I guarantee there's people right now that are listening and are like, oh my God, there's no way I could ever do that. But why do you believe risk is good? If you can elaborate on that.
I think for so many reasons, like, so it's so easy for us. Like, our mind is always, not everybody, but naturally most people's brains are going to go to the worst case scenario, or stay safe, or hold on to what you have. And I mean, the biggest thing is to have a goal of where you want to go. And I think for most of us, when we set a goal of where we want to go, it is going to require risk of you. So risk is a good thing, right? Like debt is a good thing if you know what you're doing with it. Like, people have the idea of, okay, don't be in debt. Well, anybody who's in real estate investment is leveraging debt to their advantage, right? They're going, hey, how can I move out the actual liquid cash I have for down payments to get as many properties as I can? Like, we all know that kind of approach to it. So I think what to one person is like unsafe risk, to another person is safe risk. The difference is education, right? Having the knowledge to look and see potential in a situation that somebody else can't see. That's positive risk. And I think we need to lean into it. Like, if there's a 1% chance that something horrible is going to happen, but there's a 99% chance that something amazing is going to happen, and 99% of the world is going to not do anything because of the 1%, that might be a bit more drastic. But that's where our opportunities lie. Like, every opportunity I've had in business came from taking a massive risk. Like, the coaching company I took on had huge amount of debt. It turned out it had $180,000 in debt. It was a fire sale. The minute I took 50% ownership of it, I owned 50% of that debt. But that risk allowed me to build up and transform a business. And it's no different from the risk when we took on investment properties that required massive renovations, and we had to hustle. Like, we had timelines to be able to rent them out. We didn't have the cash to cover it after. We put all the money down. So, I mean, I think it's like anything in life. People who are willing to take more risks are willing to take more growth. They're also willing to take the risk of taking a loss. And that's why not everyone's an entrepreneur, right? Like, if you're not open to as much risk, you're going to go in, like you said, joint ventures, or you're going to be, maybe potentially an employee instead of a business owner. Like, everybody has their, their gifts and their talents and their niche for a reason, right? Like, I'm built for what I need to do in life. And I think everyone listening to this is as well. It's just, are you leaning into the gifts you have? And I think the ability to see the right risks as potential is massive for anybody in business or investment.
Yeah, and you know what? I like that. I like that, the way that you said that, like, leaning into risk, and also talking about the debt piece. And it's one of those things where they don't teach this stuff in school, because to me, I never knew the difference between good debt and bad debt. I just thought debt was debt. Yeah. Listen, for my wife as well too, it took a while for us to really grasp that, because we were putting ourselves into so much debt in the beginning. But once you understand the difference between good debt and bad debt, that helps to kind of, I guess, maybe shave a little bit of that risk off, because you understand that, yeah, I need to do this to be able to lean into it, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, where you're putting yourself into more debt, but it was good debt. Yeah. And so what I was going to lean into next, right, is how do you prepare yourself for that? Is it a mindset? Is it like how do you do that?
Well, I think it is a mindset. I think it's, it's the same thing that, and I'm just going to say from personal experience because it fits in this case, like, it's the same thing that would make me a great realtor, would make me a great investor, made me a great coach, and now hopefully makes me a great coach of coaches. And it's the ability to disassociate, right? Like, we have to be able to take ourselves out of the equation and see it as a strategy and as a formula. And disassociate, I mean, take out the emotional attachment and see it as numbers. So the best way that I can do that is, for example, there was years ago, a cottage. We had looked to my first cottage anyway. It was a huge, like, pipe dream. And when we finally bought it, it was like just unbelievable, because I had all the checks in my envelope from selling real estate, because I had been on my own at that point and finally was able to do it. It was just this huge deal. But at one point we looked to get a bigger cottage, and we found that was one that was just like our dream cottage. And I loved it. Like, it had all these custom finishes. An artist owned it. They had permission to rebuild on the exact same spot as the old cottage, which was like on a mini peninsula. It's like three sides had water, but like all up to date and like perfectly like hand done hardwood and finishes. Like, it's hard to even describe. It was just gorgeous. So I go to negotiate, and we decide, first of all, again, way higher than the price range we thought, but it was just so beautiful. So I go and put in the initial offer, or sorry, there was already one offer. I go to put in the initial offer for us. they try to not let us present. It's like, we don't want to scare away the other offer because this isn't cottage country. It's not quite the same. So I had to push them a little bit and saying, hey, for your sellers, we know the deal. They could make a little bit more money. At least look at our offer. Another third offer comes in. So the first offer, upped their offer. I got a chance to up mine. What hat did I have on? I had on, okay, I'm a single parent. I cover all of the bills. I have 2 kids. I have a house. I have an existing cottage that I'm going to have to cover. I don't know if it's going to sell it right away, or am I going to be able to rent it? I don't know. So what hat do I have on? The scared scarcity emotional hat of a mother, and not the hat of a realtor who does, top 1% business. So when the third offer came in, I did adjust my offer again, and I didn't end up to the cottage. I was devastated. And I actually called myself on it, because I said, if I had given myself the advice I would have given a client, I would have had the cottage hands down. But I put on this personal attached perspective when it came to that house, and I can never win an investment or consulting anybody with that hat on. So I think it's prepping ourselves for, again, like that gentleman said to me outside of the rental, he's like, it kind of is like Monopoly. Other people are loaning you money to build your wealth and build your opportunities for the future. And I never forgot that. He's like, if you understand how to do that, this is one of the most amazing opportunities you can have. And that was the minute when I realized, okay, the only way to win in this is to be really smart, really educated, but also not be emotional. It has to, again, be from a formula of, I have a goal, I want to reach it, here's my business strategy, and this is exactly what I'm going to do. Because if you have the emotional side, you can't make the moves when you need to make them. You have to have that confidence, right? So if I don't have certainty, I can't decide.
Right.
But everything away from the emotions, I have certainty.
Right. And so once you've figured out that strategy and you deploy it, when you're looking at that deal, you'll know when it's time to walk, or you've put it down and okay, now you're going to get that deal. Because sometimes the best deal that you do is the one that you don't do. Right. So I think it's important to know your strategy and to know when it's a deal and when it no longer becomes a deal. Right.
Exactly. Have a neutral stance. Like I said I was doing a talk today, and I say it all the time. And it's everything about consultant's approach. It's the same with investment. Again, supporting clients, coaching, running a coaching business. It's all the same. It's the ability to get as neutral as possible, so we can be where no one can be objective, but as close to as neutral, so we can just see the moving pieces and kind of massage them, right? And sometimes, it's the idea to just, what is the word I'm trying to say? What you're trying to say is exactly the same idea with clients, total detachment. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Here's the numbers. And if not, we'll go on to the next one. No big deal, as long as you're logical about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. For sure. Okay. So obviously we know that the mindset's an important piece, right? How did, did you do more, did you have a coach? Was it mentoring that you were getting? Was it a book that you read, or books that you read? Was it podcasts? What really kind of got you into that mindset that you have today?
You know what? I don't I've wondered with this, because I look back, I don't know if it's just a lot of people leaving home young, needing to be independent, needing to make sure I always had money to cover myself, and I knew I didn't have a backup plan. I think that might be part of it. Also in university, I had my son in university, and very quickly I was okay, I want to make sure I have a place for him that's not going to be in a scuzzy apartment, with a bunch of drunk students around me. So I had rented out a townhouse then, and I ended up to apply and get exchange students that we did room and board with them. And then after, I took in different tenants. And I think that was the first taste of, okay, there are ways to leverage things and still make the world work. There are creative solutions that you can do to still live the way you want to live. And then after that, it was obviously the combination of understanding what my husband's goals were. When we met, we weren't married, obviously, but understanding what his goals were. And very quickly, I guess it was just the formulas. I don't know. I didn't have a set coach. We didn't have any investment coaches. It wasn't anything like that. It was just assessing properties all the time and what rents would go for and what we could do in-house versus what we'd have to spend money outside to get done. It was pretty basic.
Yeah. So it to me, it sounds like it was life itself. The experiences that you went through was your best teacher. Right. And I guess with that as well, too, did you make lots of mistakes? I'm sure you must have.
You know what? Like in the investment side, we did well. Like I say to people, like divorce is expensive. If we were, and I'm happily divorced, like it was a very good decision for him and I, and we're friends, and that's all great. So that's not the issue. But I mean, I could have been retired now. Like those properties are more than double, probably much more than double,
right?
In value in the time. So I think the only, to be honest, it's going to sound weird to some people listening, but I mean, we probably should have had a prenup of some type, because I mean, we had business and marriage mixed. And unfortunately, when the marriage dissolved, it became very difficult to deal with the business because it became part of the marriage. And that was a mistake for all sides, right? Because that's messy. And I think there's a lot of husbands and wives who invest. And I'm a big believer in agree what to do if things don't work out when you're happy. Right. Yeah. And that taught me a lot. And I deal with that in teams. Like we set expectations, like in coaching, we do that all the time. So that was a big lesson. Like that was a mistake.
Yeah. You know what? And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a good point. Because I mean, look, again, I'm sure a lot of people that are investing, they're doing it with their spouse. And while the times are going good, and you know you're collecting your investment properties, and they're going up in equity, especially the last say 10 years, you probably do want to maybe sit down and say, hey, look, if things don't go good, how do we want to divide this, right? So. Yeah, and a lot of people don't think about that. So I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because hopefully people think about that stuff. It is important.
Well, yeah. Or if you're big enough to have some type of separate holding company with neutral accounts, right? Like just ways to keep things clean, because it can get messy super fast. That's for sure.
Right.
So, and I know how hard you work to acquire properties like that. So you want to protect it.
Right. No, for sure. Okay. That's good. So listen, I'm sure there's been many challenges that you've turned into opportunities. If you had to do it all over again, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, I think looking back, like I think for most people, we put ourselves in the situations that we need to learn from. And I'm certainly no exception to that. Like I put myself in situations where people were very hard on me, or where I had business partners who were not ideal. And in the end, they gave me huge gifts, because they forced me to stand up for myself, to do things properly, to put things on their line, again, do educated risk to make sure I walked away from business situations fairly. And I didn't know I had it in me to do that, to be honest. But if I did it all again, I think I would have stood up and made difficult decisions sooner. Like if anything hurt me in business, both my current business and the past business, there were times where things just weren't working and I really wanted them to. And when people weren't showing up and they weren't towing the line, and a lot of us who are doers and implementers, we think we can do for everyone. Like if they don't show up, okay, I can make it work. You know what? No problem. But sometimes when you're so proactive and so hands-on, and again, it probably comes from leaving home young and being like, well, I can make it work. I don't need to rely on anybody. People will let you do a lot of their work for them. And I think if I did it again, I would really call it out and make changes. And I'm much more vocal now of setting clear expectations and basically making sure not that others take advantage of me, but that I don't put others in a situation that lets them or encourages them to take advantage of me because I'm doing too much. So that was a really important business lesson, that whatever you let fester becomes big. It doesn't go away. And if something's going downhill, if you give it more room and more space, it'll probably go more downhill even faster. Whereas I used to think, oh, give it space. People always do the right thing. And not so much.
Yeah.
But so that's something I've learned.
And I guess, that's got to be a hard, and again, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I mean, even for myself, something's going bad and I'm looking at it and it's like, okay, so what am I supposed to learn from this? And then you get to the point of, okay, well, am I supposed to let it go or do I keep pushing through? How do you know when to stop? Or when how do you know when to let go? I think that's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. It's super difficult. And I think of some of obviously I have a coaching company that I have now for the last, not quite 3.5 years, but almost. And I ran a prior coaching company. And I think, sometimes for those of us who our passions are so in our business, as much as I'm detached with everything that I do well, I still put my whole heart into my business. It's like a child. It's something it's a huge part of my values and who I am. Contribution's really important to me. So I think sometimes problems give us time to come to terms with the fact that the future might not look the same as the past and to step into new opportunities. But I think it's realizing though that, again, like for myself personally, the more I've given space, like if I'm showing up and trying to work it out and another person or people, a team are showing up and trying to work out a problem, that's different. Like you're all being proactive. You're on the same board. That's really positive. But if you're trying to figure out a business solution and the other person is not playing fair or opting out or not doing their fair share or is being deceitful or they're causing dynamics behind the scenes, if you give space to those kind of problems, which businesses have all the time, they get worse. Like I think I've learned that very, very clearly, that in the future, it's really important to have open communication and speak up and know when to walk and kind of go, okay, yeah, like this is going downhill fast. Like I'm going to do what I need to do, but I'm going to take action. And everybody's different, but most people I've talked to who run real estate teams or businesses have been in some version of those situations where they've tried to make things better and go, you know what? If I look back like 2 years ago, this was already happening then. It's still happening. Like right. It's just I'm allowing it to continue, right? And in business, you have to know when to call it and go, yeah, okay, I've done everything I can, and they're not showing up or it's not working. You got to call it because it can cost you your whole business.
Yeah, and you know what? And you know what? And I think that's the key point right there is what you said is not giving it space. So now you know that it's starting to run away from you or it's not going where it needs to go, then you need to be tightening up on that or paying more attention to that, right?
Yeah.
And giving it space allows it to just kind of run away on you, and that's where things can really fall apart. That makes a lot of sense. That's a good point. Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about your coaching and consulting business, because you know, I'm looking at your website right now. I love it. I was browsing through it. I've done it for the last few days here now. There's great video on here. There's great content on here. There's free stuff. I love free stuff, you know, so, and I've gotten some of your free stuff as well too. So what exactly is it that you provide?
Well, our niche that we're known for is team development. That's definitely our specialty in real estate. So helping people to scale and leverage and, you know, a lot of the same principles as investment, to be honest. So we help them figure out, you know, what their top talents are, what energizes them, what doesn't, and how to put systems around leveraging other people who have talents in the areas that they don't. Not just to do more business. We do help people do a lot more business, but for quality of life and for mindset and for fulfillment. Also for the standards of service we can offer to buyers and sellers in our communities, because for realtors, it's harder and harder to be, it's almost impossible to be all things to all people. Like just to be in tune with the tech changes alone in real estate is a full-time job. And most people, I certainly don't have full time to put my full focus just on, you know, those types of updates. So what we do is help people basically get specialists and build up their production. We help individual agents as well. But it's been over a decade now that full time I've worked with team expansion. So we were actually I ran the first team specific coaching company for real estate in Canada before it was even like a thing on any of the websites that weren't even offering it. And there was this big misconception that teams were just mini brokerages. And I certainly don't think that's true. And if anything, teams are actually really disruptive in the real estate world because of their ability to scale, when a lot of some brokerages are struggling because they have, you know, somewhat traditional models. So yeah, every facet under mindset, personality profiling, NLP, anything that somebody needs within a team to scale and grow and recruit and hire and system strategy, all of it, we cover that under our hub.
That's great. I love it. And I think you're perfect for it, because just listening to your story, what you've gone through, you know, the great times and then, you know, not so great times and then building back up. Because listen, you want somebody in your corner that has gone through some tough times in your life, because, you know, you don't want it to always be, well, I've never had or never gone through any issues. Well, then what are you going to do when those issues do come up, right? So I think you're perfect for this, which is fantastic. And obviously, it still kind of comes back to mindset. Are there any like non-negotiables of a successful mindset, you know, that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think there are, like, for our top, like, people who are most successful in our company, you mean? Mm-hmm. Like most successful building?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of them, but I mean, I think definitely like growth mindset for anybody. Like if you don't have growth mindset, you're already going to go, well, we already do it. So we have a formula that actually comes from NLP, and I talk about it all the time. And it's the idea of reasons or results. So, hey, you can have reasons, and if you have results, then they're good reasons. If you have reasons without results, they're excuses. And it's a great way to self-coach, because people get really stuck in things they like to do, and they keep telling the story again and again and again, and they keep telling themselves, it's like they're hypnotizing themselves with their own story, right? We all do it, like as humans. But if we have no results or no edge or nothing that we're gaining from that story, it's probably just a comfort thing to keep us from doing something we don't feel like doing, right? So I think growth mindset and reasons versus results, all of our top people are master implementers, or they partner with master implementers. So they all have somebody who's going to take it and run with it and get it done. And that's really, really important. And sometimes you need a team to have that come to fruition as well. The other big thing that I think is cool with a lot of the really successful people is they all believe in reciprocity. Like, they're not take style people. Like, they believe in giving back to the community and giving back to their teams, in building leaders, in transferring knowledge, which I think is really admirable. And I really believe in it. And they're also, they're not transactional. Like, you find that the people who have strong businesses, they're looking to have long-term advantageous relationships or affiliates and build together. They're not trying to go, okay, I just want to get this system and, I bought it and run with it. Or, because if you have a transactional mindset with clients, you have a transactional mindset with probably everything you do. And it can be extremely limiting because you don't get the long-term benefits of network growth, which is really important in this day and age. Like, all big companies are growing because they have multi-affiliates or networks that they build together.
Right.
So I think those long-term affiliations are really, really key. And they're committed to where they're going, which means they'll make decisions today that might be more difficult because their mind is 5 to 10 years from now. And that's a huge way to bend the world in your favor. If you know where you want to be 5 or 10 years from now, and every time you have to make a big decision, you're like, okay, but will this matter in 5 or 10 years? Or what do I need to get to be in that place? It just gives you crystal clear clarity on the decisions you have to make. Right. And in business, the ability to go, hey, I can make a decision now that might cost me half my business, or I can make it in 5 years. When's it better to make the decision? Probably now, and fix whatever issue I have, right? But we have a whole list of 8 attributes of our top 10, our top 1%. And the big one probably is just model success, right? We always model the best in any industry, and we model the best, forget the rest is our term for it.
I like it. And I mean, obviously, it sounds like goal setting is such a huge piece, and I think a lot of people miss that. And then giving and receiving, right? So starting that, that giving process, and then that allows that receiving process to come in, right? I don't know if you know, if you listen to Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was one of Tony Robbins' early mentors, but he was big on that as well too. And another thing that was probably one of the early lessons that I received in the beginning was that, when you get the information, don't keep it to yourself, give it. And then that allows for more information to come in. And that was one of the things that really, really stuck with me. I mean, there's lots of other great teachings that he had, but, that's great. It's just good, to kind of rehash that information. I appreciate that. Now, what drives you? What drives you to, when you get up in the morning, what keeps you going?
I think it's, and I've talked about this before. I don't know if it drives me as much as something pulls me. Like, I've kind of said, there's times where I'm tired and I kind of go, really, like, every single day I ask for guidance, right? Like, whatever everyone listening to this believes in, but I ask, to be able to be of service. And I believe that I am, directed, if I pay attention, that there are signs for what I need to do. But I always look for, how can I be of service? And I said, when a doorway opens for you, like, there's a good chance that you probably should walk through it, unless it's like a negative doorway. But essentially, when you're constantly asking to be of service and opportunities arise, I believe that that's a beautiful gift, and I want to, with gratitude, and be humble enough to say thank you, and I'm so thankful I have these opportunities, and if they're given to me, I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to show up until the opportunities don't present themselves anymore. And I've just always had this feeling that I'm here to contribute. And I think for me, I've said, even times where I'm exhausted and I'm tired and I feel almost like I'm being dragged through the mud, the idea of stopping just isn't an option. like I feel my life is to do something bigger than myself. And I don't know if everyone feels that way. I think everyone has something to contribute that's bigger than themselves. I think, unfortunately, not everyone gets the opportunity to connect with it, which is a shame. But yeah, I think that's what it is. I don't know what the end game is, but I know that I've been able to be of service. And as long as I can, that I think that that's more important than some of the little everyday things. And I'll sacrifice a lot to be able to, have as much impact as I can in this world and help people. And hopefully I'll be able to continue doing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And listen, and there's times I feel exactly the same way as well too. Doing what I was doing before in the IT department and to where I am now, never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd be doing podcasts and doing mastermind events and teaching people. 'Cause, I never thought, but yeah. I'm just continuing to go down this road, and what you're saying is just, use me, or how can I help other people? And I think that's an important thing to kind of continue to do. So, kudos to you for doing that. It's amazing. What impact then? I mean, obviously you're going down an incredible path. And so this is the next big question is, what impact do you want to make on the world?
What impact do I want to make on the world? I think at the end of the day, I mean, the greatest impact we can ever do is to help reflect potential to others, because if others see their potential, they have beautiful gifts to bring, and they can teach that to their children, to their community. Like it truly is an ongoing ripple effect. And I think that's why I love coaching, because we don't just help one person. Like, we get to hear how it literally changes their lives and their families and their businesses and their teams. And end of the day, what we do, it could be in real estate, it could be anywhere, but we really try to help people align their values and how they can have a fulfilled life and align their voice, so they feel like they can live authentically and be who they need to be, but do it stepping into power. And for me, I think that was really important in my life, that I didn't have necessarily mentors who saw, the excellence in me, or who saw the gifts, and I had to do a lot of that on my own. And I just imagine it was so important for me. I see, if I hadn't have been able to step into a place of power, personal power, I don't mean over others, personal power in real estate, I honestly have no idea exactly how my life would have went. Like, I went through a separation where literally the main breadwinner was gone. Like, it was just me again. And I went to university, just me. Like, it was like the ability to be able to be secure and take care of ourselves and take care of our families and be able to have influence in our lives. It's so massive in the outcome. Like, I can't even imagine the other direction it could have gone in. So for me to be able to help people see that you do have a choice, you can step into it. Sometimes we put ourselves in our own cages and break out of things so that they can have choices, opportunities, and feel empowered as people. Like, to me, the more you can do that, I mean, that's everything. That's going to go on for generations, way after anyone remembers who I was, right?
Right. And so here's a tough question then. I mean, what about self-doubt? Even sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, am I even the right person to be doing this? I'm doing my podcast, I'm running all these events. How do you overcome that sometimes? And I'm sure there's times where you go through that, and I'm sure any leader sometimes goes through that.
Sure. Yeah. There's lots of times where I was like, oh, why me? And what do I, it's funny. Like, I've done a decade of full-time real estate team coaching, and yet sometimes, well, what am I going to talk about? Like, so,
Right.
Of course I go through that, but I think the world shows us what we need to see to get stronger. Like, this past year, there was not a competitor of ours, but there was somebody else in the marketplace that I had a lot of respect for, and I still do. But the world shows you what you need to see. Like, the world basically showed me some things that were going on there that allowed me to go, okay, wait a minute. Like, yeah, you need to step up. Like, if these kind of things are going on with the people you put on a pedestal, like, really, this is showing you can't play small. And so for me, I feel like the world shows me little signs that are like, okay, like, you need to go all in and see where this goes. And if you fall a couple times, I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to get better from it. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with falling on my face a couple of times or having close catches, because like, we're set on a track record, like, to be the best in the world at what we do. And that's going to mean some failing forward, and it's going to mean some self-doubt, and maybe just being transparent about it with my team at times. I'm transparent with them and vulnerable about that. But on the other hand, like, I think it's a hard question to answer. I think the self-doubt it's like an onion, just like anything else. And the more you again, that lean in, the more you lean into, hey, I'm serious, I'm here. Like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to share my content. You know what? If nobody likes it, I don't care. Like, I'm here to be an artist and express what I think I'm here to do in the world. And end of the day, some of the greatest artists of our time, or not our time, of the existence of time, never had a fan while they were alive anyways. Like, sometimes your work's more important than your lifetime and fans and everything else, right? Like, I think this time of social media, we're so used to, if something's good, people are going to like it. Well, really, maybe if something's good, people will like it if their friends like it. Like, who knows, right?
Right.
So just being able to put yourself out there, even if you're standing alone in the dark and there's nobody else who you can even see a flicker is going to support you. I think you have to be ready to do that. And that when you hit those periods, the self-doubt for me melts away a little bit. It makes me stronger to go, okay, yeah, like, I see this is going in the right direction.
Right. Sometimes it's darkest before the dawn, right? Many times it's darkest before dawn.
Well, yeah, you have to have that bravery of going, you know what, I'm going to hold it and hope this is going to sprout, and not all of them are going to sprout. But you know what? Enough of them have to make it worth the risk. Yeah,
no, that's great advice. You just pumped me up. I'm ready to rock and roll now, Kathleen.
Awesome. Yeah.
Love it. This is a great podcast. Listen, we're getting close to the end here. But what does success look like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I put this because, yeah, anyway, I ask my clients this all the time, and I think it's funny because depending on personality, for me, success is like, I'm kind of that, Gatsby mindset of, you know, there's always that green light and there's always something to go towards. And the first presentation I ever did in coaching, I talked about that we can be humbled by the vision of something greater. And I did that because I was doing training with, at the time, the best team in the area. And being the best wasn't helping them. It was hurting them. And it was the idea that we can always be humbled by the vision of something, even if it doesn't exist. And to me, success is always pushing the line for what could be, but also taking my adventures now, like living my life to the absolute fullest and doing the hikes and doing the travel and not saying I'm too busy, because I'm always going to be busy. Right? There's no, hey, next year, like for top producers or top running like people, they're always going to be busy. So it's carving out the time now and always pushing the limits. Like, you know, if one day I never want to retire, I always want to do what I love. But if one day, you know, at the end of it, I'm still seeing that there's that next frontier and I'm still excited about it, to me, hey, then I've been successful. I've kept the spark alive, right?
I love it. So it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I don't want to ever get there because, hey, like that's the whole idea of innovation, right? Like I don't usually use that word, but kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you know what? When I woke up, I remember this was back when I was at the bank, and I was at the water cooler talking to some friends, and I was just so frustrated where I was, and I was like, man, I can't wait to retire. And then I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to wish away the next 30 years of my life so I could be 65 years old. And that was a wake up call for me. So no, that's great advice. So thanks for sharing that. When's your next event? It's called the Ultimate Team Summit. Is that correct? Is that your next one? Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, we have two big events. So Ultimate Team Summit is in November. That's right now, as far as we know, the biggest team-specific summit in real estate. So that's pretty cool. Like 60% of the people come out, sell 100 deals or more, or are on teams who sell 100 deals. And then we have tons of like 500 deal plus, 300 deal plus, 200 deal plus teams. So it's a really high-level elite environment for teams. And that's where they bring their whole team out. But our next event is actually in June in Muskoka. It's at Taboo, and that's the Ultimate 100 Deal Plus Mastermind. So that's for team leaders or like team managers, director operations, or individual producers who sell 100 homes or more, or we have 4 spots for rising stars. So if anybody's listening and they're like, I'm committed, I know my 5-year, my 10-year, and we're going to be a 100 deal plus team, and you already have a good strategy and track record towards it, you can apply for one of those 4 spots. Last year, we put like 2 posts about it, and we had 45 people apply. So we took 2 clients and 2 non-clients. So yeah, if anyone's in real estate listening and they're really committed, like getting around people who are already doing what you want to do is pretty much invaluable. So it's a pretty cool one to apply. If you're a 100 deal plus team leader, you can just register.
And how much is that one? Kathleen?
Actually, right now, it's usually about just under like $1,999, $2,000 to attend for the team leaders. But right now, because we did the REP Real Estate Professional Magazine team sponsorship, we have a whole bunch of promos going. So if they use REP promo, it's $8.99, and it's $9.99 even after for Rising Stars. They get a deal because they're not quite up there yet, but
that's great.
Yeah, and it's for 3 days. Yeah, and so it's only with 30 team leaders. It's pretty intimate. There's a lot of networking. It's a phenomenal opportunity for anyone wanting to build and connect.
And that is cheap. So anybody that's listening, that's cheap. That's a great price.
Oh, yeah. Like the $8.99 is less than half price. Yeah.
Yes. That's incredible. That's incredible. So listen, so if anybody wants to get a hold of you, they want to learn more about Kathleen Black and your coaching and consulting company, how can they get a hold of you? How can they contact you?
Yeah, our website, like we do strategy calls for anybody in real estate. We coach mortgage teams, insurance teams. We coach individuals and other businesses, but it's www.ittakesa.team. So ittakesa.team. And you can request a strategy call right there. You can get a couple of reports we offer. You can do an assessment of your business, or you can email at any time, just admin@kathleenspeaks.com, admin@kathleenspeaks.com, and just reach out to us direct for whatever you need.
Beautiful.
And we're all over social media, of course.
All right, great. So listen, Kathleen, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Great information. I actually got some insight, and I think I'm going to use it for myself as well too. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it too, Gary. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And hopefully I might be able to make it out to one of these summits. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, it would be for sure.
All right. Sounds good. So listen, Kathleen, thank you very much, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's show with Gary Hibbert. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with your host on Instagram @Gary Hibbert. Until next time, stay mindful and remember, you don't have to be great to start. Just start, and you'll be on the path to being great.